For over a year, she packed meals for a silent trucker, never knowing who he truly was. Then one night, a brutal blizzard trapped her inside her crumbling diner with no way out and no one coming. Or so she thought. Just when death seemed certain, 12 red rigs roared through the storm like ghosts from the past. What they brought with them would unravel a hidden promise, a forgotten bond, and a secret that changes everything. You will not believe who he really was. Hit like and comment where you're watching from. Your support brings more amazing stories. Now, let's begin. The wind was a savage beast howling across the flatlands like it had lost something. Snow sliced through the dark like shards of broken glass, turning the landscape into a white oblivion. Inside the battered diner, Maggie lay curled behind the counter, clutching a frayed wool blanket. Her skin was pale, her lips cracked, and her breath came in shallow puffs that disappeared into the cold. She had not moved in hours. The power had died long ago. The generator sputtered, coughed, and went silent like everything else in her life. The walls groaned around her, creaking from the pressure of the storm, as if the building itself were weeping. One of the front windows had shattered hours earlier, and now snow had crept in, blanketing half the dining room like a silent invader. Maggie had stopped calling for help. Her voice was gone. Her hope, too. She could barely remember what warmth felt like. She could barely remember anything. Then there it was, a sound, low, heavy, rhythmic, the kind that cuts through wind. At first, she thought it was the storm again, playing cruel tricks. But it came again, closer. A second, then a third. A thunderous roar in unison, like a growl from machines too big to belong out here. Maggie raised her head weakly. Her vision was fogged, but her ears were certain. Rigs, big ones, a convoy. She pushed herself up, limbs trembling, heart racing. Through the broken window, through swirling snow, she saw it. 12 rigs, massive, monstrous machines, headlights glowing like the eyes of ancient beasts. They moved like soldiers, tight, controlled, purposeful, and they were circling her diner. All sides. The engines did not shut off. Instead, the trucks stood like walls of steel, surrounding the diner with their bulk, shielding it from the worst of the storm. Then the door burst open, and he stepped inside. The silent trucker. His red coat was dusted with frost, beard thick with ice, but his eyes, those steady, familiar eyes, were locked on her. For a year, he had never spoken. For a year, he had just nodded, quietly, receiving her food, never asking, never staying. Now he ran to her. She blinked slowly, her vision blurred again, not from the cold, but from tears. He dropped beside her, wrapping his arms around her shoulders. "Maggie," he said, voice rough, deep, and full of something broken. "I'm here. I've got you." And that was the first time she heard his voice. The first time in over a year. The storm outside screamed louder. The walls shook. He tried to lift her. She tried to stand, but neither of them could move. The storm was too strong. The door slammed shut again from the wind, locking them inside a frozen cage. He looked into her eyes. "We're not getting out tonight," he said. "But we're not alone." He turned, and one by one, the other truckers entered. Each one with blankets, heaters, lanterns, tools. They were not just here to rescue her. They were here to hold the diner together. To hold her together. Inside the diner, the cold bit deep, but the presence of the 12 truckers shifted something in the air. One by one, they moved with quiet urgency, setting up portable heaters, sealing broken windows with plastic tarps and the steel panels from their rigs, lighting emergency lanterns to cast a golden glow through the frost-bitten darkness. They worked like men who had done this before, like men used to surviving storms together. Maggie sat on a booth cushion now, wrapped tighter in a heated blanket. Her lips still trembled, her body still weak, but she was no longer alone. Her eyes followed the silent trucker as he moved through the diner, giving hand signals to the others. He had not spoken again. He did not need to. The others understood him like brothers understand one another. Without words, one of them brought her a warm mug. "It's just water," he said gently, "but it'll help." Maggie took it with trembling fingers. Her gaze never left the man in the red coat. "You know him?" she asked. The trucker looked up. "David?" "Yeah, most of us do. He's not much of a talker. Not since. But the man stopped, glancing at David with quiet respect. Whatever story he had been about to tell, he left it unsaid. The look on his face said enough. The truth was all of them knew pain. That was what bound them. Veterans of the road, Survivors of crashes, breakups, breakdowns. Men who had learned to fight storms outside and inside themselves. They had come not just to save Maggie, but to stand beside one of their own. Suddenly, the diner shook again. A violent gust slammed into the side. Plates rattled. A ceiling tile fell near the counter. David caught it before it hit the floor, threw it aside, and looked toward Maggie. "You all right?" he asked, finally speaking again. She nodded weakly. Her lips moved, but no words came at first. Then finally, "I knew you'd come." David's jaw clenched. Something flickered in his eyes. "I promised him I'd protect you," he said. Maggie stared, confused. "Promised who?" David took a breath. "Your husband." The room went still. Even the wind seemed to pause. Maggie's eyes widened. You knew James?" David sat beside her now, removing his gloves. His hands were calloused, scarred, hands that had seen too many winters. "He was my best friend," David said softly. "We drove together for 10 years. He was supposed to be on the road with me the night he died, but I canceled last minute. Family emergency. He went out alone into the same kind of storm that's howling outside tonight." Maggie's breath caught. Her heart thudded in her chest. "I didn't just lose a friend that night," David whispered. "I lost my voice, my purpose, my nerve. I couldn't face you, couldn't face what I left undone." Maggie was crying now, tears falling freely down her frostbitten cheeks. "All those months you came here, and I never knew. I couldn't speak," he said. "Not until now. Not until I could protect you the way I failed to protect him." He reached out, gently touching her hand. A storm still roared around them. But inside that diner, something had begun to thaw. The storm howled outside, but inside the diner, the warmth of flickering lanterns and shared silence created something sacred. The 12 truckers gathered around the center of the dining area, pushing tables together, clearing space. Someone dragged in crates from one of the rigs. Thermal sleeping bags, canned goods, a coffee brewer powered by a portable generator. These were men who carried their homes in their trucks and their hearts in their hands. Survivors who knew how to build shelter when the world collapsed. David remained beside Maggie. His silence returned now that he had spoken the truth. That single revelation had left her shattered and mended at the same time. Her husband's name, James, hung in the air like a ghost finally acknowledged. She looked at David again, really looked at him. Not just the beard or the red coat or the haunted eyes, but the man who had quietly sat in her diner day after day, never saying a word. The man she had instinctively fed. The man who had watched over her like a silent guardian. "You've been coming here for a year," she said. David nodded. "I always wondered why you seemed familiar, why you looked so lost." "I was," he said. "But you gave me a reason to stay. And when I heard your name, I couldn't walk away. Not again." A voice from across the diner called out, breaking the moment. "Coffee's hot." The group gathered around the makeshift center table. One of them handed Maggie a steaming mug, then raised his own in the air. "To those we lost," he said. Everyone raised their mugs. "To those we protect," another added. "To the road," said a third. Then David's voice, quiet, steady, and to standing like mountains together. A murmur of agreement moved through the circle. They clinked their mugs together, letting the ritual settle into their bones like old armor. Later, as Maggie sat near the lanterns, bundled tight, she watched them. They shared stories in low tones, some tragic, some ridiculous. Laughter rose now and then, honest and unfiltered. These men had been through war zones of asphalt and memory, and now they had brought that battle-hardened loyalty into her life. One by one, they promised to help rebuild what was broken. Not just the diner, but whatever Maggie had lost. "We'll make it stronger," one said, patting the wall. "Stronger than before," said another. "And warmer," someone joked, earning a round of chuckles. David stood quietly, his arms crossed, looking out the fogged-over window. Snow still slammed against the rigs outside, but their engines stayed on, forming a protective barricade against the wind. Maggie walked to him. "They're your brothers," she said. He nodded. "We were all lost once. Then we found each other. After James, I stopped driving with anyone. But when the storms came again, I called them, told them someone needed saving." Maggie looked up at him, her voice steady despite her tears. "So, you came back." "I never really left," he said. A gust of wind shook the windows again, but this time they held. And somewhere inside that storm, 12 men and 1 woman found something they thought they had lost long ago. A reason to stand firm together. By morning, the blizzard began to ease slowly, reluctantly, as if nature itself had finally tired of its fury. The sky lightened from pitch to pewter. Snow still swirled, but the sharp, violent edges had softened. The wind no longer screamed. It whispered. And through the thinning clouds, a pale slice of dawn broke across the white-covered world. Inside the battered diner, Maggie stirred beneath a pile of blankets. Her limbs still ached. Her voice was still, but her heart was steady. Around her, the truckers moved with quiet purpose. They had endured the worst storm in a decade and kept her alive through it. David stood near the window, his coat dusted with frost. The once frozen glass now offered a blurred view of the world beyond, and what they saw brought stillness to the room. Flashing lights, dozens of them. Maggie sat up, blinking in disbelief. Rescue vehicles, red and white, pushing through snowdrifts, crawled over the distant ridge. Search and rescue. Emergency crews. News vans. All zeroing in on the red rigs that had shielded the diner like an iron fortress. They had been spotted from above by satellite, someone said. A ring of red paint glowing in a sea of white. The truckers moved into action again, but this time not to survive, this time to welcome relief. As the first medics reached the diner, they pushed the doors open, flooding the room with cold air and golden morning light. Maggie shielded her eyes. "We've got survivors," one medic shouted. "Multiple. Get stretchers." Maggie stood, trembling but upright. David moved beside her, steadying her with a hand on her arm. "You don't need to carry me," she told him softly. "I'm not carrying you," he replied. "Just standing beside you." Together they stepped through the broken doorway and into the blinding snow. The light stung her eyes, but she did not look away. Ahead, rescue workers were unloading gear. News cameras turned. Paramedics rushed forward. But Maggie paused just outside the door, snow crunching beneath her boots. She turned. The diner, her diner, was cracked, patched, and snow-laced. But it stood, and beyond it stood the 12 rigs. Their red paint gleamed beneath layers of frost. Steam curled from their stacks like breath from sleeping giants. They had shielded her from death, held the storm at bay, and within their steel silence, built something she never expected to find again. Family. David gently placed a hand on her shoulder. "Your husband saved me once," he said quietly. "I finally got to return the favor." Maggie's throat tightened. Her breath shook as she looked one last time at the rigs, the diner, and the men who had stood against the storm. Then, just before the medic led her away, she whispered into the wind, "He is gone. But you brought his promise back to life." And in that frozen dawn, where silence once meant pain, it now echoed with grace.